Welcome to this new video tutorial on WpCasterPro. We are going to see how to make a podcast in the proper way. First of all, make sure to also check out the podcast and episode chapter of the documentation, because this will give you a reference that you can check step by step while creating your podcast episodes. The important concept that you need to understand is the structure of podcast and series in this theme, which is the very standard structure used on any podcasting website. So, what is a podcast? A podcast is basically a show, and it is made by episodes, so podcast episodes, and podcast episodes are organized by series. You can see this very same structure if you go to your dashboard and open the podcast episodes menu item. Here you can see that you have the podcast episodes, you can add a new episode, then you have tags, series, and categories. We will leave tags and categories for a second moment, and we will focus now on episodes and series. So, please stay away from the concept that one podcast episode contains multiple episodes. This is not how it works properly. WordPress has its own podcasting structure, and all of the external podcasting platforms are organized in this very same way. So, one episode is one episode, has one MP3 file, and it has one content. It is not meant to contain tens of MP3 files. So one podcast episode or multiple podcast episodes can be organized in series. A series is technically the equivalent of categories for normal blog posts. So this may be something that you are already familiar with if you used WordPress before. If not, I'm going to show you how it works. It's extremely simple. Podcast series are like labels. If you want to make a podcast called, for instance, the Quantum Teams podcast, you are going to just type the Quantum Teams podcast here. Once saved, clicking add new series, you are going to get one label like this. This is like a big box where all of the episodes belonging to this series are going to be stored with. The same episode can as well be categorized under different series, but this is not a standard, and while we allow to do it, is not really recommended for normal podcasting activity. So as you can see as well here, we have seasons under a series. This is because you can divide your podcast in series and seasons. If you create a subterm under a series, it is going to be automatically organized as a season, and this allows listeners to filter episodes by season. We are going to see in a minute what it means by the front-end point of view. Let's follow the documentation. So, series and structure. A series or a show is a collection of episodes. Here you can see for every series how many episodes are under this label. So you can click on the view button, and this is how the series looks like. So it's basically a channel, a show. People can follow series, people can share series, people can play series, people can search a specific episode within this series or filter them by season. The first thing you may want to do before starting creating episodes is to create a series. So just go here and type something like my new series. You can leave all of this empty and just add your new series. This is going to look empty, of course. So now edit your series and you can add a description. Save and check how it looks like. The description will appear under the About section. Then imagine you want to add some design to your series. Let's upload a picture or choose one from your archive, like this one. This is the thumbnail that will appear as well along with the episodes of your series. Now, if you want a header, you can add a header image here. And here we go. Now imagine that you don't want it to look like this, but you want this picture to be the background of the page. You can go to the customizer, go to Podcast Archive and say, we recommend first removing all of these effects, so you are going to have this picture looking more neat. So we go to header and menu, page header. Make sure to have less effects. Make the alpha as you like. Maybe set the gradient as you like. And then we go to edit our series design. So in Podcast Archive and Series, we can change how this looks like. Series page. Header option, display featured image. This will display the featured image in the single podcast episodes. This display header banner image will change this. Use category image as page background. We'll put that picture as whole background for your series. And you can also change the border radius for the thumbnail. You can choose if you want to display the number of subscribers and episodes. Then you can display subscribe button, share, playlist, and more. Remember that to subscribe, people need to be logged in. So if you are not logged in as user, you cannot subscribe. This is going to be covered in the user manager chapter of the documentation. You can choose if you want to display the description. You can change the title of the description. You can change how the episode series appear, hide or show the header. Or change the title of the section. So don't change the code. This is very easy to be customized. You can also change the archive style to grids. So this is a list this is a grid. If you go in a single episode, you have, as you can see, the link to the series here. Once you created your series in the way you like, remember to save the changes and we can start creating episodes. So let's discard the changes and let's look how to create a podcast episode. This is actually pretty simple at basic level. Then you have many more options that you can use if you want to add interactivity and much more stuff. If you follow these steps one by one, you are going to use all of the possible options that this theme has to offer. You can also go with the basic guide that is provided here. So, create a new episode. Let's go to Add New. Pick the series that we want to use. You can add a new one or just pick the one that we just created. Let's say this is the first season, so add new series. Let's choose, make sure you put the season under the series. So season under the series. My new series, and we call it first season. It could be anything you like. And this will appear right here. Episode 1. You type some text. And then this is the most important part. You want to type an author name. Why? Because the author might be not the one who is publishing this. So you want, for instance, to display some other author name. Pick a date, because the episode may not correspond to the date that you are publishing this. So we are actually ordering episodes by the custom date that you add here. It's very important to respect the calendar structure. So we are publishing it today, but perhaps this podcast, it's a recording from 17th of March. We can set an episode number, which is basically just a number. And here it is, the most important part. You really want to set the correct file. So there are two options. You can use the absolute link. Absolute means that it contains HTTPS and the link to any MP3 file, which means that you can link to an episode that stays on any external service like Blueberry, Anchor FM, or all of the rest. You cannot play audio from YouTube, you cannot play audio from SoundCloud, from Mixcloud or similar, because they want you to use their player. You can use these services, but you will need to embed the player here. You cannot play the audio from SoundCloud in the main website player. Instead, this website works better if you add an MP3 file. So I am copying any MP3 file from an external link. What you want to make sure is that the MP3 file exists in this way. Otherwise, you click Choose File and drag and drop a file here from your own computer. If you have any error while uploading a file, what you need to do, go to Settings, Qt Server Check, and make sure that the post max size and upload max file size are higher than the size of the file that you are trying to upload. If you have like 12 megabytes here of maximum upload file size, you cannot upload a 1 hour MP3 podcast because that is going to be about 60 megabytes. So as rapid calculation, consider that 128 kilobit per second podcast 1 hour is going to be 60 megabyte. 2 hours podcast 128 kilobit per second is going to be 120 megabytes. So if you compress your MP3 files correctly, which means 128 kilobyte per second or 256, not really recommended to use 320 kilobit per second because that is going to be very slow for people to listen. You may want to have this at about 200 mega of maximum upload file size. Also make sure to have a good execution time. Otherwise, it is not going to be able to elaborate your MP3 file. Upload your file, and this is another important field, especially for your podcast RSS feed. If you want your podcast RSS feed to be embedded in iTunes Podcast or similar, it requires a link to an enclosure MP3 files. So this needs to contain the same URL. While in another case, if you want to make premium podcasts and you don't want your feed to publish the direct link to the MP3 files, you want to set the enclosure here to be your same MP3 file, and the theme will automatically hide it from non-logged users. If you want people to be able to download the podcast or purchase it, you can also choose an icon and again set the link here. In this section, you can set the track list. So this means you can skip to certain part of the MP3 file. How does it work? Just set the time. For instance, this is the first one. We can set section 1, section 2. We can set something. This is hours, minutes, and seconds. So if you press tab, this is going to format the thing in the correct way. This is the only format that is accepted in order for the player to skip to this point. Here we go. Last thing you may want to do is to set a featured image for your podcast. Squared images or rectangular images are fine. Just make sure that the subject is in the middle of the picture. Let's publish this and see how it looks like. As you can see, the picture is not squared. So what you want to do is for the podcast episodes to use squared images. Like this one, for instance. For podcast, squared pictures are a standard, so since we work with standards, we really want to have a squared picture, and people can as well read if there is any information on top. This is going to work already perfectly. And you can use the timestamp that we just created to skip to different parts. If you want to disable comments, you can do it from the customizer. At this tab, you will see if there are other episodes rather than this. Our single episode is ready, and we can add as many as we want. If you have multiple categories, you can use categories and tags to optimize your podcast visibility on the search engines and allows easier navigation for your visitors. Of course, we already have a list of categories and certain podcasts. So which is the difference, certain tags, which is the difference between categories and tags? So the best definition I've ever found is like this. Imagine this is the menu of a restaurant. Categories are like first dish or dessert, while tags are like the ingredients contained in a certain dish. So you want to make keywords that characterize the content itself, while categories is like a keyword that is supposed to host together multiple episodes speaking about the same topic. We recommend making wise use and not putting too many categories for your podcast. Otherwise, this is going to make it harder to navigate. This is pretty much all, but you may want to make sure you go through the different chapters and also make sure to check the next chapters if you want to host external authors or create premium podcast. So we are going to cover these topics in the next chapters of these video tutorials. Thank you for watching and see you on the next episode.